You might be a little surprised if we said that the Korean movie The Witch Part 1 and 2 could have been seriously influenced by Genocyber. Of course, it doesn't involve a fusion of powers of a pair of twins, nor do they turn into a world-ending humanoid death machine, but the general storyline of psychic powers, extreme gore, ruthless killings, ultimate trust, and protective instincts for people they care about, but with more gore and blood and mind-blowing powers. See where we're going with this? So, without further ado, let's enter the world of Diana and Elaine as we explore their tortured existence and transformation into a biomecha god. Because it is their story, the story of two little girls who just wanted a normal life, but even that choice was ripped away from them. Genocyber, full movie recap. The first episode is titled A New Life Form and starts with a video recording of a man with a lab coat asking another man named Kenneth if everything is set. As the video starts running, this man, a scientist, Dr. Nguyen Morgan, explains a project that he's been working on that has nearly reached completion. He speaks about how photos of humans taken from a higher place will show distinct shadows around them. These are called mind shadows, a power that exists in that universe and consists of great power. This is made possible through chi. He describes it like a strong wind. Dr. Morgan names this wind as Vajra. In pursuit of extending this power through the mind shadows, he builds an instrument called a mandala. The video then proceeds to show a pregnant woman hooked to the mandala while Kenneth checks if everything's alright. The good doctor seems to want to test the success of his experiment with his pregnant wife Tanya and unborn child. He believes that the Vajra can only be manifested through a new life form. The child that will be born will possess great powers, the kind that could create or destroy the universe. Dr. Morgan dubs his creation Genocyber. The scene fades to show us Hong Kong in the 21st century. There's a bunch of teenagers bullying a boy out in the open. It looks like the head honcho of the gang wants the boy to pay him money, and after roughing him up pretty badly, the group leaves him in the ditch and walks off. In something of a daze, the boy sees the face of a girl looking over him. When he finally wakes up, he's surprised to see an actual girl with blonde hair standing over him with a puzzled look. We are taken to Professor Reed's office where he and Inspector Davy, a cop inspecting the mysterious death of a scientist in the Kuryu group, are having a conversation. Inspector, I think it would be a complete waste of time to start bringing up the past, Reed says. After all, it's been 13 years. Davy corrects him, saying that it's been 14 years since the fateful incident with Morgan. Yep, Dr. Morgan and his lab were destroyed in what was reported as an accident. Apparently safety wasn't a concern back when they were working. The inspector further pushes his buttons by wondering if the good professor was continuing the work Morgan did because he saw firsthand the kind of destruction it caused. Except for Reed, no one else survived, not even Tanya Morgan or her child. At least, that's what's been broadcast to the world. Just as Inspector Davy finishes a not-so-subtle threat to Reed, the door crashes open and Davy turns to see a pair of human bodies inside out walking towards him, and in the middle of it, the face of the dead scientist from before, alive and bleeding from the eyes. It felt too real when the inspector did a double take and slammed his back into the wall of his office. Suddenly, the images vanish as we hear a slap and the professor shouting in a stern tone, "Diana!" His vision clears as he looks and finds an attractive, dirty, blonde-haired woman looking at him with hate in her eyes. Reed was beside her as he berated her furiously. "You fool! What did you think you'd gain coming in here and interfering?" And then turning to Davy, he says that he thinks it's best for him to leave now. Diana is lying down on a couch in Reed's office as he takes a round object and examines it before putting it back down. She asks, "Father, is that the collar that Elaine lost? Isn't it rather important for her to have it at all times? It helps her control her Vajra, doesn't it?" Reed exhales deeply, and he admits that losing Elaine is a huge dent in his research process. Without her, he's stuck at a dead end with no way out. As he speaks, we see the same blonde girl, Elaine, and the bullied and beaten little boy living like squatters. Elaine exhibits somewhat animalistic behavior, walking on all fours, sniffing food and the like. The professor continues his monologue of how important Elaine is to him and Diana as well. He says that he needs her help in locating Elaine. Diana voices her doubts, and her father suddenly takes on a more aggressive tone. "I saved your worthless lives. I protected you all these years, and you still won't listen to me." This is the first indication that Professor Reed might not be the girl's real father. The scene fades with Diana's intermittent screams to the inside of a restaurant. Three people, a red-haired woman, a fat man looking like he's intent on licking every bowl clean, and a large, grumpy, muscular man wearing a suit and black glasses are seated around a table. The woman shows her colleagues a few photos of Elaine wearing a lab dress and looking positively feral, informing them that she is their new assignment. The grumpy man looks even more grumpy as he grunts out his disapproval. "What the fuck are we anyhow? Janitors? Every time any one of their guys messes up, they call us to clear up." The woman admonishes him to stop complaining complaining because this girl is supposed to be unlike any other job. She informs them that Elaine has great powers and she must be brought back in alive. They are cyborg agents, Ketsu, Wakayama, and Amachi, working for the Kuryu group. Meanwhile, Elaine is sleeping peacefully in the deserted building she and her friend occupy. Her sleep seems to be disturbed by something as we're shown glimpses of weird images. Blood cells, veins, electricity, and a hazy form of some kind of a monster before she shoots out of her bed, breathing heavily. Elaine hears a thump outside and her senses are on high alert when she sees an orange roll into her hands. She jumps out of the bed on all fours and reaches the fruit, howling like a wolf and poking at it. She looks up to see the boy carrying a bag full of food. The two climb up to the terrace and Elaine sits down as her friend remains standing. She levitates the orange in her hand and it goes around at full speed and peels open on its own, looking like a flower. The orange pieces flew out and into the boy's mouth. Wide-eyed because his mouth was full of the pieces, he chews for a while before breaking out in a wide smile. Elaine gives a full-toothed smile in return as they just stand there, soaking in the beauty of the sunset, not realizing how little time they have left on Earth, especially the boy. The weird image we saw in Elaine's dream was Diana connecting with her sister, and the rest of the scenes were Diana watching Elaine. In this scene, we can see Diana connected to a tube with a similar collar to Elaine's around her neck as Professor Reed monitors her. Diana says that she has never seen her sister so stable, as Reed is certain that this would be the best time to get her back to the facility. What we see next is a robotic armor with advanced features and arsenal in its body. Painted green with splashes of red, the armor's head is a monstrous face with green horns protruding sideways and a diamond-shaped stone set in the middle of both eyes. It's attached to Diana's body and pretty much becomes one with her. As Diana gets ready to fly out to get her sister, the scene changes to Inspector Davy, his assistant, and a computer expert gathered in front of a computer poring over a video that belongs to the dead scientist. As they watch what seems to be a meaningless clip, Elaine suddenly drops in front of the camera. As she decides which way to go, the scientist rushes and wraps a coat around her and tries to coax her back with him, but she doesn't look too happy. Davy asks the expert to pause the video, and the man enlarges the frame to get a better look at the girl. He's stumped. She looks exactly like Diana, the woman he saw in Reed's office. Could it be that they're related? Is there something more sinister going on? Was that mad scientist Kenneth Reed up to no good? These are the questions swimming in his eyes. The one thing he's certain about, though, is that she's at the center of something off. But he doesn't dawdle, quickly getting his colleague to make arrangements to bring the girl in. We once again see the bullies at the beginning of the episode. The soon-to-be pulp leader of the sorry gang accepts money from a man for work well done. The man inquires into the little boy they had with him. He said that boy wasn't of any use to them, so he dumped him. But the man informs the teenager that he saw the boy with a girl yesterday, likely his girlfriend. He casually remarks that she's a pretty little thing. Oh, if they could only know the damage that pretty thing could cause. But the plant was seeded. The bully and his gang have to see for themselves. To think that a loser like that boy could find a pretty girl didn't sit well with them. They soon find Elaine and the boy, whom he addresses as Rat, probably because of his diminutive frame. Rat is pissed off and can't do much against a grown teenager used to getting his way. Elaine doesn't speak, but she's mad as the bully throws Rat to his waiting friends. Before she can do anything, Elaine suddenly freezes. Her eyes widen and she literally goes into a sort of paralysis. But that doesn't stop him from getting his grubby hands all over Elaine's body. Her friend watches helplessly as the guy removes her coat and kisses her, grabbing her behind. His friend, in the meantime, assaults the boy and harasses him by asking if he had the hots for Elaine, pulling his pants down to check for themselves. Satisfied with their preferred choice of torture, they proceed to kick him away. The moment Rat is kicked is when Elaine awakens with an ear-splitting scream. The roof collapses as Diana, in her full robotic glory, lands and crushes the bully's skull like an insect. She turns her attention to her twin, speaking calmly. "Elaine, it's time to go home now. Pull back, Elaine. Pull back your Vajra. Let me protect you. Come home, please," Diana pleads with her. But she does nothing of the sort, and electricity crackles as Diana screams her name. All this time, Reed and a few scientists are watching the events unfold in a truck outside of the building. An explosion occurs, after which Elaine and the boy vanish. Diana tries to locate her sister but fails. Reed asks what's going on as Diana relays the information. The three cyborg agents are keeping watch on Elaine. Both she and the boy appear on what looks like a train platform. Elaine looks tired, gasping for breath, having used her energy to transfer them into another dimension. Rat manages to get Elaine onto the train and stands guard in front of her, daring anyone to come close. He's clearly rattled as he looks around in fear at everyone on the train. Meanwhile, one of the agents gets a call from the higher-ups asking for confirmation on the girl. Upon positive identification, they get the go-ahead to pick her up at the next station. The three of them come out with Elaine in one of their arms. Ketsu, the fat cyborg, suddenly starts screaming and scratching his head. He looks positively terrified, saying that bugs are inside his head and body, and finally pulls his skull open, killing himself in the process. Elaine, who was on the ground just then, appears behind the other two, looking at them with a stern face. They run away, taking the boy with them. As the police and medical personnel arrive on the scene, Diana's voice is heard in the background. She asks her father why he's protecting Elaine from her. Reed answers that he was protecting Diana from Elaine. Apparently, Elaine's Vajra has exceeded far beyond his expectations, and going against her now would be suicide. He says that it's safer for everyone to fall back, but Diana seems to have had enough of Reed's excuses. She fires back at the mad professor, accusing him that it's safer for him, that she is frightened, and that Elaine wouldn't hurt her. By this time, Elaine is in the care of Davy as the police take her to a hospital to treat her wounds. As he stands over Elaine, we're taken to a flashback of the inspector. He had long been following Dr. Morgan and his crew of brilliant yet displaced scientists. 14 years ago, Morgan was in the process of building a superweapon that replaced nuclear energy with psychic energy. It would mean a major change in the balance of power, and the cherry on top, their experiments were a success. But in what was an unexplained accident, the lab and everything and everyone in it were destroyed, except for the weapon and the research materials. But Davy recently found out that Morgan's assistant, Kenneth Reed, was behind the whole incident. There wasn't any conclusive evidence, but all signs pointed to it. Perhaps what was even more shocking was that Tanya Morgan, who was pregnant at the time, also survived. The woman he saw with Reed was the Morgan's daughter, and Elaine was her sister. Tanya had kept her hidden for as long as she could. If Davy could talk to Elaine and get enough evidence, he could finally arrest Kenneth Reed. But before he has the chance, the inspector finds himself surrounded once again with the same images as before. It was Diana interfering with his brain. Not getting the time to even comprehend what the hell is going on, Davy finds himself chained to a bed in an eagle position, his intestines spilling, ribcage exposed, heart still beating, and blood pooling around him. To complete the sadistic picture, he is still alive, looking down at his insides outside, and there's nothing he can do about it. Diana then approaches a sleeping Elaine and gets inside her head, trying to reason with her. Elaine is determined to never go back to Reed. She also informs her sister that he isn't their real father. Going blank for a moment, Diana regains composure, but only for a moment before she has enough of babysitting her sister. She goes completely ballistic as her cyber self grabs Elaine by her throat, fully intending to put an end to her. She wakes up in time to blow up the unit into which she was put. The two sisters take the fight to the terrace, but it is clear that Elaine is still tired. But she doesn't let Diana get the upper hand and gives tit for tat. Taking advantage of her energy-depleted state, Diana throws her down the building, only to pull her back with the use of her robotic tentacles piercing her shoulder. Elaine, in a desperate attempt, takes off the sheet covering her body and weaves it through Diana's robot body, tightening it around every nook and crevice, leaving her unable to move. Diana finally begs Elaine to stop as the cyborg agents arrive with her young friend. Seeing Rat dangling helplessly in their hands disrupts her focus, and Diana takes this opportunity to plunge her robotic claw through her abdomen. The little boy opens his eyes and, on seeing Elaine, smiles despite the obvious pain he was in. She smiles back, looking at Rat's peaceful face, committing him to memory as an enormous power surge emits out of both sisters' bodies. The cyborg agents confiscate Diana and the professor, taking them back to the Kuryu group. They accuse Reed of conducting unsanctioned experiments and that his fate will be decided once they land at headquarters. As Diana is in a comatose kind of state, she sees some images from her past. She isn't sure who they are, but she can feel that they're close to her. In Diana's dreamlike state, we see Reed turning on Morgan because he wouldn't allow the experiments to continue due to a lack of funds. But Kenneth isn't going to let it happen, and he agrees to a deal with the Kuryu group. This leads to the two associates falling out, and it is clear that he was behind Dr. Morgan's murder. We also see Tanya's delivery. They were expecting one child, but in a shocking turn of events, another baby girl reaches out of the womb, and her dream ends with a baby crying, realizing that she was nothing more than a tool for Reed's ultimate goal, a superweapon that would merge the two sisters' power. The agents had also taken Elaine's body with them, and when Diana screams out in her frustration, the supposedly dead Elaine wakes up right in front of Reed's eyes as a monstrous figure. The professor looks dementedly gleeful watching his creation arise out of the capsule. The sisters merge to become the Genocyber. Elaine primarily controls the body, but Diana's Vajra is also part of her. With nothing left to live for, Elaine loses control of her powers and sets out to destroy Hong Kong. The cyborg agents also turn into their true forms, ugly grotesque figures strung together by human features. Genocyber, for its part, is a more pronounced figure of Diana's robotic armor. A 7-foot gigantic monster with a green body, a mouth full of sharp teeth, narrow eyes, and a diamond-shaped object on its forehead that, when charged, can emit an ultra-powerful beam that can decimate anything and everything for miles. The Genocyber also has angel-like wings to help it fly. She shows no remorse as she grinds Hong Kong into dust, never to see it again. What happens after Hong Kong? Genocyber versus the world. The next 4 episodes show different periods where Elaine finds herself having to turn into Genocyber out of need rather than want. The second episode shows her living with a group of kids whom she befriended in a country called Karain. They withdrew themselves, and that's where she lives after the total annihilation of Hong Kong. But Karain was destroyed on orders from the United States, and during that, Elaine's friends fell to bombs and bullets despite her best efforts to save them. This infuriates her to the point where she ends up transforming herself into the green-headed monster that is Genocyber. She destroys everything, fighter jets and battleships of the US Navy, but satellite photos capture Elaine in all her garish glory and immediately catch the attention of the Kuryu group. After her rage subsides, she transforms back into an innocent, mute girl. Anyway, shocked that a little girl managed to survive the slaughter, a chopper that managed to stay far away from Genocyber picks her up and drops her off with the Alexandria, a supercarrier containing top scientists and military off the coast of Japan. Unknown to the captain, another mad scientist on board has created a Vajra, similar to what Professor Reed was trying to achieve. On Elaine's arrival, this creature senses her presence, as does she, and malfunctions. From this episode on to the last, we see that Elaine's body has become cybernetic from head down, like her sister Diana. It could be that this occurred during the merge of their powers, but whatever the reason, a female doctor on board, Myra, takes Elaine under her wing, naming her Laura after her own dead daughter. Despite the mad scientist's best efforts to keep his Vajra under control, every time Elaine gets close, it goes crazy, finally resulting in a minor battle between them. This newly created Vajra has the ability to fuse itself into whatever object it wants to, using its powers as well as the recipient's to be a perfect weapon. As such, it tries the same trick with Elaine, but she rips off her arm and kills the Vajra. But the arm that was ripped off survives thanks to the regenerative cells it imbibed from Elaine. Getting his hands on the original creation's cells, the mad scientist creates another Vajra, but this time it's a massacre. The new Vajra takes over the entire ship and kills everyone except Elaine and Myra. Taking energy from the still alive souls, almost like the Legion, the Vajra tries to destroy Elaine, but she is the Genocyber for a reason. She goes straight for the nucleus of the ship and kills it from within, as another area is brought down to nothing but dust and rubble. Elaine then goes on a mad rampage, killing everyone and destroying cities until finally she freezes her Genocyber into a sort of sleep-like state. Just like that, we come to the final stage of the OVA. This time, we see years have passed, and it's the year 2400. The surviving humans are saved and taken to a place called City of the Grand Arc, run by a ruthless and selfish mayor. It's situated in outer space with stringent rules on living. The cream of the gentry lives in lavishness and amid luxury, while the commoners are subject to a life of bare necessities, harsh surroundings, and extreme punishments. While Elaine, Diana, and Genocyber only appear in dreams and flashbacks, this episode's protagonists, Ryu and Mel, particularly Mel, seem to share a deep bond with the twin sisters. Mel is blind, but she has psychic powers as well as a keen sense of hearing and her environment. The couple arrives in the city to get Mel's sight back, but understanding how expensive the procedure will be, proceed to make money instead. Unfortunately, Ryu gets caught in between an unnecessary murder by none other than the mayor and his group. As they try to escape their black clutches, they stumble upon a group of rebels underground. When Mel is underground, she feels the presence of Diana in the dream world. The mayor's lackeys soon find Mel and the rebels and kill everyone, including the little kids and her unborn child. Angered and helpless at the hand that fate has dealt them, Mel calls out to the dormant Elaine, waking up Genocyber, ignoring Diana's pleas not to do so. Somehow, Mel fuses herself with the two sisters, and this new Genocyber is even more ghoulish than the last, covered from head to toe in red, sinewy, muscle-like structure with an oval-shaped head and curved yet sharp, angled horns. Not to mention at least 2 or 3 times larger than the green one, gigantic or titan-sized, if you will. Genocyber kills a few people as it breaks out of its underground prison. The Genocyber separates Mel from its body, returning to its green form, and saves Ryu from the city as well. It then drops both of them from space to Earth as a scream rips out of Genocyber's throat and heads straight for the city of Grand Arc, much like a meteor speeding towards it. The city is destroyed. We next see Mel wake up next to an unconscious Ryu on the ground before realizing that she's alive and can see. As the credits roll in, a few stills also fly by. These images show Mel with 2 children, a dark-haired boy and a blonde girl. Could this little girl be a reincarnation of the twin sisters? We'll leave that theory for you to ponder on. Marvelous verdict! So, that was the story of 2 sisters that were abused by their stepdad and turned into a godlike, world-ending death machine. Would you like to see more videos like this one? Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you guys next time.